she makes this awfully hard. It's like, okay, now do I need to live up to all of this big buildup that she's giving me? Um, wow, 15 years. Has it really been 15 years?
I think it's probably closer to 16 or 17.
Wow, that's amazing. Um, Good morning, everybody. How are you? I would not like for this to be a lecture. Um, I would like this to be a discussion. So I'm going to ask you some questions as well. So to try to live up to this big billing that I just got, this is year 45 for me as an educator. My first year of teaching was in 1980, before all of you were born. Um, so I've been classroom teacher, head football coach, head track coach, assistant principal, retired as a principal in 2012. I was out about 6 months and came back and started working again, doing expulsion hearings for the district in Columbus City Schools. And currently, I am the district ombudsman. And a lot of people go, what? What's that? Basically, if you remember, if any of you watched the TV show Scandal, I'm a male Olivia Pope. I'm the superintendent's problem solver. Any complaints that comes to the superintendent's office hits my desk first. So that's kind of what I do these days. To say that it's been a journey is an understatement. Again, started teaching before all of you were born. So if you do this thing right, this is the experience that you will have. Do a little math for me. My first year of teaching was 1980. I was an art teacher, football coach. The guys who were seniors my first year of teaching and coaching, how old are they today? Come on, you college students, math, let's go.
63.
Yeah, early 60s. And if I see some of them today, it was like we were together last week. If you do this thing right, you will forever be a part of young people and now old people's lives. I heard a professor from University of Maryland in a conference I was at, and he made a statement. He said, teachers touch eternity through their students. And again, if you do this thing right, those are the kind of experiences that you'll have. Okay, a couple of questions for you. Why teaching? Why do you want to do this? Anybody, you don't have to raise your hand. This is college.
Just a moment. Everybody's going to be a teacher. Raise your hand. Because I'm about half and half this.
Okay. Well, let me make this disclaimer then. For those of you who are not going to be teachers, I don't want to offend you. Obviously, a lot of my comments will be centered around teaching, but a lot of them will be centered around life principles, which you can apply across the board, okay? All right. So you folks that are endeavoring to be teachers, why? Yes.
I want to be a teacher because I feel like there's not a lot of African American male representation in school buildings nowadays. So I feel like, I want to be that representation so they don't have to expect like you have to be something other than a regular teacher.
Yes. African American males represent less than 1% of the teaching population in America. Anybody else? Yes.
I want to be able to support my students and encourage them in ways that some of my teachers did.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay. So when I was in your seat, the last thing I wanted to do was be a teacher. Teaching chose me. I didn't choose it. You know, when I went to Ohio State, there were 3 letters in my vocabulary: NFL. That was it. And then when that did not become a reality, you know, life was like right there. It's like, okay, so what are you going to do with the next 30, 40, 50, however many years of your life? And I was always an artist, self-trained. And so I said, oh, I think I want to become a football coach. And because football was a big part of my life, from that big all the way through college. But the Ohio high school rule at the time was if you taught or if you coached, you had to be a teacher at the school. So I said, okay, I'll become an art teacher. My first year of teaching, at the end of my first year, a young lady gave me her senior picture. And she wrote on the back of it, Mr. Murphy, I really enjoyed your class. She said, I learned a little bit about art. She said, but I learned an awful lot about myself. And that kind of set me on the trajectory that I was on, because like most first year teachers, I was fumbling through. I thought I knew what I was doing, but I really wasn't. But so it's been 45 years of helping young people first and foremost understand who they are and then what they can become. And if you have, again, that mindset going into the classroom, regardless of where you teach, be it urban America, suburbia, overseas, wherever. You know, Dr. Stauffer said, it's about relationships, 100%. 100%. It is all about the relationships that you build. Because you can have the deepest amount of academic knowledge to impart to your students, but if you don't have a relationship with them, they're not listening to a word you say. And if they're listening, they're just kind of half listening. And if you do build a relationship, they'll hang on every word that you say. And those words that you say will live in their hearts for the rest of their lives. I read a definition of a word about 10 years ago, and it was the word legacy. And a lot of people say a legacy are things that you leave to people. But this definition said, a legacy is not what you leave to people, it's what you leave in people. So if you build a relationship with your students, or if you're not a teacher, with your employees or your colleagues or whatever, it's all about relationships. You know, you've got to be able to get along, even if you don't like each other. You know, I've been married for 47. Oh my goodness, it'll be 48 years in a couple of months. If I did not have a great relationship with that lady who lives in my house, we wouldn't have lasted 4 minutes, let alone 48 years. Because I am not an easy person to live with. I bought her a mink coat on our 25th anniversary. And I told her anybody who could put up with me for 25 years deserves at least that. In the teaching piece, you've got to know every kid's story. Because every kid's story will give you a great window into who they are and why they do what they do. You may not be able to solve their issues, and in urban America, our children come with an awful lot of issues. You know, I'm sure you've probably heard of the ACEs. You know, they're going to learn about it. It's called adverse child experiences. And there's like 10 of them. And the more of those experiences that you've had as a young person, the harder school is going to be for you, because it takes you in a whole different direction. And a lot of our young people come with 5, 6, 8 adverse childhood experiences. I think I had 7 of the 10. And so school for me was not easy because while they were teaching algebra, I was worrying about those 7 aces, and how those things impacted my life. And I would love to say that I had some great teachers that helped me walk through that, but that was not the case. And the only thing that really turned my life around was enlisting in the Marine Corps after I graduated from high school. That put me on a whole different trajectory, a whole different thought process, a whole different lifestyle. At 19, and most of you are there, 19, 20, somewhere in that range. At 19, 14 people could live or die on my decisions, because I was a squad leader in combat at 19. Gave me a whole different window on life. But so teaching's not what you do, it's who you are. I had a friend that I ran into a couple of years ago who found out that I was still working. And she said, what is wrong with you teachers? You people can't retire. Because I will forever be a teacher regardless of what kind of title I carry. And I told her, I said, I've always believed that teaching is not what you do, it's who you are. So how do you stop being who you are? So I continue to work with young people. And doing it for 45 years has not been easy, because I've worked with a lot of people who call themselves teachers who need to be selling cars or painting houses or doing something else, but they don't need to be in the classroom. They're miserable, they're making children miserable and destroying young people's lives. So I'll give you the upside of this enterprise, but I also have to give you the downside. And the reason why, because I need for you to go into this thing with your eyes wide open. And she used, and I put her on the spot here, she used to, when she introduced me, she used to say, I don't know why he keeps coming back. Okay, so let me tell you why I keep coming back. It's real simple. It's an investment in our children, because our children need great teachers. People are fleeing the profession because it's hard, and it is. It's a life of sacrifice. I have a young man who I've known for 47 years. And till 2 days ago, we still have had a running argument and a running debate that you gave more of yourself to other people's children than you did to your own son. That's hard to live with for me. But it's a reality. I did, because I understood the immensity of what I did outside of my house. So if you're going to do this thing, you need to understand it's an all-in proposition. I had a young lady that I interviewed as a teacher one time, and I asked her, I said, and she was engaged to be married, and I asked her, I said, does your fiance understand the sacrifices he's going to have to make to allow you to become a teacher? And she looked at me and laughed. She goes, what are you talking about? She said, I'm the one that's going to be teaching, not him. I said, okay, scenario for you. It's Thursday evening. He wants to go to the movies. You got papers to grade. What are you going to do? She said, I'm going to stay home and grade my papers. Absolutely. He needs to understand the sacrifices that he's going to have to make to allow you to do what you do. Dr. Stafford knows my wife quite well. My wife's a marvelous lady, okay? She allowed me to bring a strange young man in our house and let him live with us until his mother let him come back home. Not many women would do that, you know. I remember one time at the end of football season, I was sitting in the kitchen on a Sunday evening. I think my daughter was like 9 or 10. And she looked at me and she said, "Dad, why are you here?" She was, I went, "The season's, what do you mean I'm here?" She said, why aren't you, don't you have a meeting? Aren't you supposed to be coaching? Which kind of went, but I did spend a lot of time away from home. And I'm working through repairing that relationship with my son and daughter. It's an ongoing process. But the thing that keeps me moving forward every day is thinking about those young men who are now in their early 60s and the lives that they are now living because of the relationship they had with me. And I say that with no ego whatsoever. I can recall one time I was in Kroger, and I was standing talking to a friend, and a young man walked by me, and his face looked kind of familiar. He wasn't so young anymore, but and he waved and he kept on walking, and then he came back. He said, "You probably don't remember me, do you?" And he told me his name, and I went, "Yeah, I do remember. You told me your name." He says, "I just want you to understand something. I bet you don't understand the impact that you had on my life." He said, "You were the only African-American male that I knew, including all those in my family, that showed me what it was like to be a man." And he hugged me and he turned and he walked away. You can't buy that, But, at the same time, you look at those young men who were not successful, and those eat at your heart as well. Quick story, there was a young man by the name of Jamal, when I was a principal, who was a senior, beginning of his senior year. It was during the time you had to pass the Ohio graduation test to graduate from high school. He had passed all 5 parts of the OGT. Up until the end of his junior year, he had a 3.6 GPA. Highly intelligent young man. And he's sitting in my office with his dad. And his dad saying, "Mr. Murphy, you got to help me with my son." He said, "My son wants to be a fool. He wants to be a thug. I'm trying to tell him we don't do that in our family. We go to college, we go to work, we build businesses, we do positive stuff. We don't do the thug life." So I asked Jamal, I said, "Jamal, tell me why you do what you do." And he said, "I don't know." And I said, "That's a cop-out. Really think for a minute and tell me why you do what you do." And he sat there for a few minutes and he said, "I really can't tell you why I do what I do." I said, "That's a problem." So, we worked with Jamal, passed all of his classes his senior year, graduated. So I'm going, okay, hopefully we've made a difference and we'll move on with life. In July, I'm sitting at home and I open up the Dispatch, and there's Jamal's picture. Under the headline, 19-year-old sentenced to 25 years in prison for killing a guy in a robbery. Same kid. And it's like this big arrow through my heart. It's like, man. So I went and visited Jamal in prison. And I reminded him of that conversation we had in my office. And I asked him, I said, "Do you wish you had made some different choices?" He went, "Absolutely." But he wanted to be a thug. And you need to understand that sometimes I have to put a qualifier on some things that I say so that people don't misconstrue my intent. I am unapologetically focused on black male students, unapologetically. Because every time I see one, I see myself. And remember, 7 adverse childhood experiences I walked through. And So to see Jamal do what he did to his life, it just wears me out. You know, and just to help you, because maybe you have not heard this or wrapped your head around this. You know, I tell young men who look like me that in today's America, they have been enculturated into a lifestyle that's meant for their destruction. My dissertation is the impact of a single-gender school on the social, emotional, and academic progress of low-income African-American males. So when I was doing my research, I came across this, and so I tell all of these young men, and I say this, and I share this with young people even today. I'm going to give you some facts that I can prove, and then I'm going to give you a scenario that I can't prove, but I'm willing to bet my house is true. Fact: prison is big business today. If you don't believe that, Google Corrections Corporation of America. 6th largest prison system in the United States behind the federal government in 4 states. Privately owned, started by 3 guys in 1983. And I did this research like in 2008, 2009. And I said in 2006 alone, in 1 year, these 3 guys made $2.6 billion. And 60% of their population looks like me. So that's fact. So here's my scenario. If I'm a businessman in America, I don't care what my business is. I sell cars, you know, I build houses, I cut hair, I make clothes, whatever. The way that I gain business is that I market and I advertise. That's the American business model. And I tell young men, if you don't believe that, you know, when you watch the basketball game tonight, count the number of commercials in between the basketball game. Real simple. It's marketing and advertising. Buy my stuff, okay? So if prison is my business and that's how I make money, I still got to market and advertise. So if I made $2.6 billion in 1 year and I've been in business since '83, can I not afford to funnel hundreds of millions of dollars to T.I., Lil Wayne, and 50 Cent to portray a lifestyle that's going to feed my industry? Jamal was caught up in that loop. He believed all of that nonsense in the music that he listened to, you know, the videos that he saw, and he wanted to live that lifestyle. And it's designed for one of 2 things. Just put you in a grave or put you in a cell so somebody can make $60,000 a year locking you up. Because that's what they were making at that time. Per inmate, 60 grand. And they owned, at that time, over 78 facilities across the country. So, my goal for the rest of my life is trying to help them understand that the game in which they're in. Because my mother broke it down for me really early when I was 10 years old, and I remember like it was yesterday. And it wasn't yesterday because I'll be 76 in May. So, but I remember it like this, it was yesterday. She said, you need to understand, you live in a society that's made for and by white males. They don't even respect their women, so what makes you think they're going to respect you? She said, so if you want to be successful, you have to understand that there's a game that's being played. You got to play the game by the rules. You have no power to make the rules. You have no power to change the rules. So if you want to be successful, you've got to understand the rules of the game and be ready and be flexible when the game changes. And when I talk to young men, I give them this analogy. If I'm your basketball coach and you're sitting on the bench next to me and you want to get in the game, and I say, okay, go get in the game. And you walk out on the floor and you stand in the middle of the key and say, okay, every time somebody comes down the middle of the key, I'm going to hammer them. How long are you going to be in the game? Not long. You're going to be back on the bench next to me because you got 5 fouls. All right? This life's the same way. There are rules that we have to play by, whether we think the rules are fair or not. And I tell them, if you want to be successful, if you want to win the game, you just got to play it better than the next person plays it. And sometimes the rules are stacked against you, but you still got to fight to win. And a lot of the young people in school today, they don't hear those kinds of stories. They don't hear that kind of message because a lot of teachers are focused on their content, which should be, because that's why you're there, okay? But at the same time, in today's society, you are no longer just a teacher. You are a counselor, you are an advisor, you're a therapist, you're a mentor, you're a friend, sometimes you're a surrogate parent. That's your reality. So if you cannot wrap your head around doing that, I suggest you go see your counselor and change your major, okay? But if you're going to do this thing, let's have at it. Because as hard as it is so rewarding. You know, I recall one time, it was in summer, and I'm sitting in my truck and I'm stopped at a stoplight and got the windows down, listening to music and just kind of daydreaming. All of a sudden I hear this screaming and I'm going, what's going on? And I turn and there's a lady in a car and she's got her 3 kids with her. And she's screaming, hey, that's Mr. Murphy. He used to be my principal. Hey, it's like, and she drove on off. You know, it's fantastic. It's truly rewarding to know that you have had an impact on young people's lives. Have any of you seen the movie Coach Carter? Okay. And the young man who stands up when they're sitting in the gym and said, thank you, sir, you saved my life. That's what good teaching does. Now, I've got some colleagues who nobody will ever say that to because they don't even like the kids that they teach. And it takes a student about 5 minutes to know if you're real or not. And it's unfair that you got 5 minutes, but that's all you got. That very first day, they're gonna know you're real or not. And if they think that you are not there for them, they will turn you off and you will be fighting for the rest of the year to get them back. But if you touch them, you got them, and they got you. You know, and they will run through walls for you. They will fight for you. You know, I remember one time I was assistant principal. I had a young man. His real name was Linnell, but everybody called him Fat Cat because he was the biggest thug in Windsor Terrace at 16. And not self-professed, but by everybody at Windsor Terrace. But this young man would do anything I asked him to do. He'd walk down the hall with his hat on, and obviously kids aren't supposed to wear your hat in school. Teachers would tell him to take his hat off, and he'd look at him and go, psh. He'd see me coming down the hall, he'd take his hat off. I didn't even have to ask him. He'd go, I got you, Mr. Murphy. He'd go on. So I asked him one day, I said, why do you do what you do? And he said, let me tell you why I do what I do. He said, I know that every teacher in this building and most students are afraid of me. And so I play on that. He said, but if they had enough balls to make me do what I'm supposed to do, I would do it. That's how intelligent this kid was, you know. And so one day we're out at lunch, and kids are out just kind of socializing, and his car pulls up next to the curb, and these 4 guys get out, and they're not students of our school. So I step up to the car and say, gentlemen, you don't belong here, you're not any of our students, you need to leave. And they're giving me a whole bunch of lip and profanity and whatnot. And then all of a sudden there's like 15 guys around the car, led by Fat Cat. And he says, you can't talk to Mr. Murphy like that. Get in your car, get up out of here. The boys got in their car and pulled off. You can't buy that. You can't buy that kind of loyalty. You can inspire that kind of loyalty. You know? If you choose to teach in Columbus City Schools, which is the largest district in the state of Ohio, well, it's optional now. But when I was a teacher, I had to belong to the teachers union. It was a closed shop. Hopefully none of your parents or significant folks are members of CEA, because I am not a big proponent of CEA. I fell out with the teachers union when I was a member of the teachers union, because the scenario was we were on a 9-period day and everybody taught 6 classes. And one year, my teaching partner and I had enough students sign up for our classes so that next year that we would have 7 classes. So we both said, not a problem, we'll teach 7 classes. And our faculty rep came to us and said, you can't do that. So that's a violation of the contract. I said, no, it's not. The contract says I cannot be required to teach more than 6 classes. I can teach 9 if I so desire. And she looked at me and she said, you can't do that. If you do that, they'll expect all of us to do that, and you've got to look out for us. I'm not here for you, I'm here to help the kids. They filed a grievance against me and my partner. And of course, they threw the grievance out because number 1, you can't grieve your own members, all you can grieve is administration. And 2, it wasn't a violation of the contract. And so I went back to her and I said, know this, I understand that Columbus is a closed shop, and so if I teach in Columbus, I have to belong to the union. So you get my money, but you don't represent me. And I was done with them. And when I talk about the union, people think that I'm anti-CEA because I'm an administrator. I fell out, like I said, I fell out with them when I was one of their members. But they do some stupid stuff that is counterproductive to educating children. Matter of fact, in, what was it, 2019, 2020, somewhere there, we got a new superintendent, Dr. Talisa Dixon, who was one of my former assistant principals. So that's another story. But she ordered a curriculum audit through Phi Delta Kappa. So a team of 15 people spent 6 months in the district just doing their audit. So when it was time to report out the finding of the audit, Dr. Stripling, this little 5'2" white female from Texas, stood up in front of the Columbus Board of Education and she said, I would like to start my remarks on the audit with this statement. She said, in my 30+ years of doing this work, I've never seen a collective bargaining agreement that's more counterproductive to educating children than here in Columbus, Ohio. That didn't make big news, and it should have, because the next day, the governor closed schools for COVID. But that should have been splashed all over the dispatch. That should have been the lead story on every newscast. And it got buried because schools closed and COVID was the big thing. You know, and I won't give you some of the gruesome things that they do, but they just do some stupid stuff. You know. But again, enough of the negative stuff, sorry. You know, I love what I do. I do. You know, God called me to be a teacher. Like I said, I didn't choose to be a teacher. Teaching chose me. You know, I wanted to be running up and down the football field on TV, but that wasn't what he had planned for me. You know, but my life has been so much more rewarding because of what he allowed me to do and what he tasked me to do. I had a young man who was a sophomore when I went to one school as head football coach. Little skinny sophomore, really intelligent, pretty talented. Had a horrible home life. Mom did drugs big time. He didn't know who dad was. When her drug buddies would come by, she would kick him out. And he'd call me and I'd go, where are you? And I'd go pick him up and let him stay with me till she let him come home. Guy I was talking about earlier. So this went on his sophomore and junior year. summer before his senior year, she put him out and he stayed with me the entire summer. He wanted to be an engineer, highly intelligent, pretty talented. And so at the end of the summer, his mother called me and said, I'm going to call the police. You're trying to kidnap my son and all this other craziness. So I told him, I said, dude, you got to go back home. And he said, okay. He said, I'll go back home, but this is the last time. He said, if she ever puts me out again, I'm never going back. Okay. 2 months in his senior year, she puts him out. So he had already turned 18, so I got him hooked up with Franklin County Children's Services. And since he was 18, they emancipated him and they put him in his own apartment. And so he had his own apartment his senior year. And had a really great senior year in football. Graduated, I think, 3rd or 4th in his class. Went over to Allegheny College. And he called me at the end of his freshman year. And he said, Coach Murph, I just want to let you know that I'm changing my major. And I'm on the phone yelling and screaming. I said, what is wrong with you? All the hard work we did to get you to college, you are going to be an engineer. He goes, stop. He said, you don't understand. He said, I'm changing my major. I'm going to be an English teacher so I can do for kids what you did for me. He is an outstanding teacher. I've hired him 3 times. Okay. And I watch him work with kids and it's just like, yeah, you get it. So again, do this thing the way it needs to be done and the way it has to be done. You're not going to get rich. You already know that. But your life will be so rich. I had a teacher one time, outstanding English teacher, who built great relationships and rapport with students. And in the middle of the year, she got a new student in her class. He was like 6'6", about 280, African-American young man. She's about 5'1", about 105 pounds. And she's in her class doing her thing, and she said some things that he got offended. And he got a little surly with him. And just like Fat Cat, all of a sudden there were like 5 guys around his desk saying, no, she ain't the one. You can't talk to her like that. And they got together after class and he understood why she said what she said. And actually, she became his favorite teacher after that. But again, your students will invite you to dinner, name their children after you. I mean, you name it. If you do this thing right, because that's the impact that you have on their lives. Again, teachers touch eternity through their students. And there are, I can sit here and tell you story after story after story of just the wonderful things that I've experienced in 45 years. I can tell you some pretty heart-jerking stories, like Jamal, because that's part of the journey as well. But you can't let the hard parts deter you from doing it right. You have to put your heart out there, and you have to be willing to let your heart get stomped on. You have to be totally transparent, because if you're not totally transparent, then there's no bond, there's no trust. I tell folks all the time, I suffer under no illusions of ego. I am probably the biggest critic on Bob Murphy. If you want to know what I don't do well, ask me. I'll tell you. Because if I am truly transparent and honest with you, when you see those things that I don't do well, you'll go, well, yeah, he did say he didn't do that well. But if I tell you, hey, I'm a great painter, I can paint your house and it'll look good, and then you come in after I'm done and there's splotches all over the wall, not only are you not going to pay me, I'll never get hired again, and you're going to tell all your friends not to hire me. Okay? But if I do a great job and I am who I say that I am and I can do what I say that I can do, then that trust is. And every staff that I work with, the very first meeting that I have with my teachers, I tell them, if we're going to do this thing well, we've got to build trust. So I'm going to tell you all the things that I do, and I want you to trust me until I show you that I can't be trusted. And you build trust a lot better. Because again, if they know all of the things you don't do well, when they see those things, they'll go, yeah, you did say that. You know, I tell them, you know, if you stop me in the hall and ask me to do something and I tell you I'm going to do it, then you better follow it up with a note in my mailbox, a note to my secretary, or an email or something, because I'm going to forget. You know, my brain is full with a gazillion other things. You know, 10 minutes after I had that conversation with you, I've had 20 more. And so now your conversation is back here somewhere. And a couple of months into school, this teacher stopped me, or no, she came to my office. And she said, hey, you know, you told me you were going to do X, Y, and Z. And I said, really? I said, did you let my secretary know? No. So I said, did you stick a note in my mailbox or send me an email? She goes, no, why would I do that? I said, didn't I tell you that I was going to forget? And she looked at me, she went, yeah, you did say that. I said, you thought I was lying? You know, I know me, you know, and so if you're honest, you know, and transparent and share your story, because your story intersects with every kid's story, they will trust you and they will open up to you and tell you things that they don't even tell their parents, because you build that trust. Now, obviously, if they tell you some things that are, you know, dangerous to them, you know, you're a mandated reporter. You got to say those things to the proper authorities. But at the same time, you know, that trust is there. You know, let me share this, and then I'll let you ask some questions. The thing that helped me most as a person, as a teacher, as a principal, was this. And I wish I could say this is original, but it's not. But God revealed to me that there's only 3 things in this life that I can control. That's what I think, what I say, and what I do. I can control those 3 things. I can't control anybody else or anything that anybody else does. But once I learned to control those 3 things, now saying you made me mad is now not valid. Because you can't crawl inside my head and make me think something I don't want to think. Or say something I don't want to say. Or definitely do something I don't want to do. And I remember I was in a staff meeting, like 75, 80 teachers in the library. And my guidance counselor said some pretty ugly things to me. Never responded, went on with the meeting. And she came into my office about a half hour after the meeting. She said, I owe you an apology. I said, for what? She said, I offended you in the library. I said, no, you didn't. She said, yes, I did, because I said this, 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 and this. So I said, yeah, you said those things. But it's my choice whether or not I'm offended. And she looked at me, she said, that's impossible. You can't do that. So you can't make me think something I don't want to think. I know who I am. I'm really secure in who I am. You know? And I tell kids all the time, you know, you, especially dealing with discipline situations when fights and whatnot. So there is nothing that anybody on the face of the earth can say to me to make me fight you. Can't. Your words can't cut me, bruise me, make me bleed. Now you try to put your hands on me, I'm going to hurt you severely. But words, please. I had a young man that I had to pin on the floor because he was in a fight and he kept struggling, and I told him no. So I pinned him on the floor and I laid on top of him until he finally calmed down. So we got up and we walked to my office. And he sat down in my office and he said, I'm going to give you that one. I'm going, what? He said, if you ever put your hands on me again, he said, I'm going to hurt you because I got hands, I got skills. And I told him, I said, well, good, I'm glad you told me that. So let me share this with you. I said, the Marine Corps taught me how to kill you 50 ways with my hands alone. So if you want to swing on me, take your best shot. And he looked at me and he goes, you crazy. I said, yeah, you swing on me, I'm going to show you how crazy I am. But I mean, it's marvelous. Questions?
Just a few more stories, can I ask? So that
She knows all my stories. Okay, yeah, go ahead.
And be thinking of your questions. Would you tell, so kind of steer it toward MPA? They
Okay.
did get to see the video, so they understand.
Oh, okay.
But I'd like them to understand how your dissertation led to your meeting at COSBOC, the Coalition of Schools that Educate Boys of Color. And maybe tell that story of the young man that was graduating at Boys Latin, so they understand how the ACEs don't always prevent what you're
Yeah.
working for.
Okay. She knows my stories better than me. Uh, yeah, when I was doing my research, I looked at 10 schools, all single gender schools for black and brown boys. And I asked them, I said, the lowest graduation rate for any of those schools was 95%, by the way. So I asked them, I said, to what do you owe your great success? And they said, first month of school, we don't deal with academics. It's all about social emotional learning who our boys are, some of the things that they deal with, and we build a cocoon around them to address all of the needs that they bring that are non-academic. So I asked them, I said, okay, so what is your greatest hurdle? And they said, our greatest hurdle is Mondays. They said, because Monday's a lost day of instruction. Because Monday's reculturation day. They've been at home in their neighborhood all weekend. It's like, okay, let's get refocused on why we're here, why we do what we do. And a friend said, do you realize that, told me one time, he said, do you realize that there are 36 Mondays in a school year? So if Monday's a lost day of instruction, that's 7 weeks of school that's lost every year. Multiply that over 4 years, that's almost a full year of school that's lost. So the rest of my life's work, and since you've seen the video, you know it's the Master's Preparatory Academy, which is a boarding school designed for African American males. You don't have to be an African American male to come, but if you come, you need to understand what you're walking into. If you're not an African American male, I'm not changing the program for you because that's what it's designed for. But if you choose to come, you'll learn an awful lot about yourself and moving forward as well. But so MPA is, I want to say it's my life's work, but it's not. It's my heart. I want, because I know what we can do for young men in that setting. Those 10 schools that I looked at my research were all affiliates of the Coalition of Schools Educating Boys of Color. And they had what was called a national gathering every year. And basically it's just a conference. And people come from all over the country. And every year they would bring young men to address all of the educators that were in the audience. And we were in Philadelphia one year, and there's probably 500 to 700 educators in this auditorium. And this young man steps to the mic, and he said, just first things out of his mouth, you need to know my story. He said, I'm a senior at Boys Latin. He said, but my freshman year, my mom put me here in Boys Latin, and for a year I hated my mother. He said, I didn't want to be here. He said, but I was on my way to jail. He said, I was doing stupid stuff, I was getting ready to join the gang, and so that's why my mom put me in Boys Latin. He said, but I want you to fast forward 4 years. He said, I stand before you now. He said, I am the valedictorian of my class. He said, I got a 3.9 GPA. And he said, I'm on my way to Harvard. And so that's what I want to do with Master's Prep. I want to take young men who who have 1, 2, 5, 10 adverse childhood experiences and help them understand not only who they are, but who they can be. You know, I wrote a thing over Thanksgiving. I was out in Oregon visiting my daughter, her family. And one morning I was up early and I was trying to figure out something to write to explain to folks truly the essence of what the Master's Preparatory Academy is meant to be. And this is what I wrote. I said, a seed has everything within itself to be what God designed it to be. All it needs is to be planted in good soil, receive sufficient water and sufficient sunlight. That is the definition of the Master's Preparatory Academy. We are the good soil. We will be the sunlight and the water. Because, you know, I've seen some young men with talent oozing out of their bodies who destroyed their lives because of bad choices. You know, and I tell every young man, choices are long-lasting and life-changing. One bad choice can alter your life forever. If you don't believe that, ask Jamal. Anything else I need to tell?
No, thanks.
Questions? Yes, sir.
Besides your faith and your spiritual alignment with God and everything, how did you and how do you be able to manage all that you have?
That's a very good question. I'll answer it by relating a conversation that I had yesterday with someone. They said, "How you doing?" And I said, "I'm doing really well, in spite of some stuff." You know, I can't give you a ironclad, this one thing helps me, because it's a multitude of stuff. It's all the experiences that I've walked through that has helped me not only become who I am, but stay who I am and continue to grow. And I think understanding the term, the true meaning of the lifelong learner, is what helps me. Because I wake up every morning and first and foremost, thank the Lord for that day. Because I know ain't none of them guaranteed. You know, and thank him that what he says I am and who he says I am is more important than what anybody else says I am. I mean, let's face it. You know, again, I'm sorry, but I'm brutally honest. So if I offend you, I'm sorry. But for those of you who don't understand, even though you may say you do, it's hard being a black man in America. I'm just going to be flat out honest with you. It is hard. Because you're always on focus. Because you have to be for your own survival. Mentally as well as sometimes physically. Whenever I go to conferences, when I fly in my sweats, so I want to be comfortable. You know, I go to a conference in Boston. I walk into the into the hotel, I got my sweats on. And this guy's got a hotel uniform on, so I know he's an employee. So I step up to him and I ask him a question. He looks at me and he turns and he walks away. I'm going, okay, so I go into the counter and I do whatever. Later that afternoon, I come down the elevator with my suit and tie on. Same guy walks up to me, he goes, "Can I help you, sir?" I said, "No, you can't help me." And he got a little offended. He goes, "Why not?" I said, "You didn't help me when I asked you the question earlier today. And he said, when? How did that happen? And I told him what I had on. He goes, that was you? Yeah, same guy. Okay, just different clothes, you know. Yeah, I walked into a clothing store a number of years ago. I got 5 $100 bills in my pocket because I want to buy a couple of suits. I walk around the store for half an hour. 5 associates in this clothing store. Nobody comes up and asks me, can they help me? So I asked to see the manager. And the manager came out, and I laid my 5 $100 bills on this counter. I said, I was about to spend this in your store. I said, but none of your employees wanted to help me, so I'm going to take my money elsewhere. He goes, no, wait a minute, no, we can help. No, you can't. You know, so it's difficult to answer your question, you know, because it's not one thing. It's a myriad of things that help me move forward each day. You know, because I understand the significance of who I am and what I do. And again, no ego in that statement whatsoever. You know, quick story, and I'll let you ask some more questions because I just thought of this story. For 10 years in a row, I worked at the Fellowship of Christian Athletes summer camp in Michigan. And I was presenting to all the young men, and I told them about my journey, the fact that I went to Ohio State to be in the NFL and not to get a degree, because I knew I was destined for greatness, is what I share with them. And I said, and after that, career didn't pan out. I got into martial arts and got pretty good at martial arts. You know, fought, I think, like 14 tournaments, had like 12 first place and 1 second and 1 third. And ready to go fight my very first, and this was the year, my style was Taekwondo, and it was the year that Taekwondo was going to be an Olympic sport. I'm going, okay, greatness, win an Olympic gold medal, you know, these other things. A week before I go fight my first national tournament, I'm in an automobile accident. I get 50 stitches across here. Doctor says, no martial arts for a year. I'm going, here's my chance for greatness, and it's gone. And I'm sharing this story, and Vince Tobin, who at that time was the defensive coordinator for the Chicago Bears, was in the audience. And so afterwards, he came up to me and he said, I want to help you with something. He said, you weren't searching for greatness. He said, what you were searching for was fame. He said, you already possess the greatness that you seek. He said, I watched these young men as you talked to them, and they hung on every word that you said. You have a gift to touch young people's lives. That's your greatness. Okay, so that's what pushes me forward. In 45 years, I've never been burned out. You know, the teacher burnout. How can you get burned out of doing things that you love to do? Those people that get burned out are there for all the wrong reasons. Okay, questions, I'm sorry. Come on, I'm not that good. There's got to be some questions. Yes.
What advice would you give besides trying to find your right reason why to be in there? What other advice would you have for future teachers?
Again, be you. Don't try to be something that you're not. You know, if I'm a young white female, you know, I can't walk into a class full of black and brown kids and try to be the hip hop queen if I'm from suburban America. Be you. You know, help them understand you and be transparent about being you. They will trust you and they will show you them. You know, so yeah, be you, be real. My first question, whenever I interview a teacher, and I asked them, tell me who you are. And invariably, everybody regurgitates their resume. You know, and I sit and I listen. I go, okay, that's great. You told me what you do. Now tell me who you are. And they kind of go, what do you mean? What do you want to know? I want to know who you are in here. You know, what drives you? What's your why? What keeps you up at night? What worries you? Those are the things that are going to tell me what kind of teacher you're going to be for my students. You know, your resume doesn't help me. So yeah, be you. You know, and be honest with you. Being a doctoral student at one time, I understand statistical data. So I have no statistical data to back up what I'm about to say. But I believe that roughly 85% of the people who walk the face of the earth are not honest with themselves. They believe that there's some place that they're not, or there's some person that they're not. And so, example, if I am your principal and I come in and I observe your class, and I say, oh, you know, I enjoyed this lesson. You did A, B, and C really well, but I think you need to work on X, Y, and Z. And if your response is, no, I did X, Y, and Z very well, I can't help you. Okay, you're in denial. Okay, be honest, because again, that's where trust is built. You know, and if you're not honest with you, how can you be honest with anybody else? Again, teaching is not what you do. It's who you are. Because at the end of the day, this thing is a people business. You know, yeah, you're operating in other currency of knowledge, you know, and whatnot. But first and foremost, it's about people development. You know, never lose that, because that's the core of doing this work. And you've got to be in it for the people, the young people, not the old heads, not the knuckleheads. Oh, I forgot. See, you didn't tell me about this one. You didn't remind me. Okay, you're slipping. No. When you become a teacher, or when you do your student teaching, or when you do your observations, I want you to visit the Teacher's Lounge once, and then never go back. The Teacher's Lounge in every school building, I don't care where you teach, at what level you teach, be it elementary all the way through high school, is the most toxic environment in a school. Because all the teachers who are unhappy sit around and complain about kids all day. They will poison you. You know, it didn't take me long to realize that. I think I may have eaten in a lunch in the Teacher's Lounge twice. I always say once, but I think maybe I went back one other time. But after that, I ate in my classroom or in the cafeteria with kids. Questions? See, you guys are going to make me make this a lecture and not a conversation. Yes?
Based on what you're speaking about, not right now, but just all throughout, we can see that you're very secure of the person that you are. And I feel like at our age, or at least for myself, like we're still on that journey of becoming secure with ourselves. Like, how did you get to that point? Like, how was that?
Well, I'm still on the journey too, okay? Again, kind of the way I respond to his question, you know, a lot of it has to do with, you know, the experiences that I've had. I've had a lot of successes. Yeah, I've had a lot of failures too, but I learned from those failures. You know, I want to be the best version of myself that I can be. And you've got to be secure in yourself, because there are a lot of folks out there who will attack you and try to tear you down simply because they're not secure about themselves. You know, and they want to make you think less of yourself so that they can feel better. You know, I I operate under a pretty simple rule, and Dr. Stauffer kind of touched on it when she did the introduction. You know, I hear what you say, but I watch what you do. And if there's no congruence in those two things, you know, I'm going to keep you at a distance. But if I hear you say some things and it lines up with what actions I see, okay, then now I'm going to lean in. You know, you probably don't believe this, but I'm an introvert. You know, and when people see me and hear me, they gotta go, get out of here. It's like, outgoing as you are, that's not me. I'm an introvert. Okay? I can be alone with Bob Murphy and be perfectly happy. But God called me to be an extrovert and interact with people because some things that he put in me, he didn't give them to me for me. He gave them to me for other people. You know, I heard a preacher out of Texas say that one time. He said, everything on the face of the earth that is made for a purpose outside of itself. He said a chair was made for somebody to sit in, you know, not for its own purpose. And he said, so if God made everything that way, why would he make us any differently? So everything that he put in us is not for us. And I learned a long time ago, this ain't about me. You know, it's about the people whose lives that I touch. You know, so for however many days he's got left for me, I want to get better every day. And when I talk to young people about this, especially guys, I give them this example. If I can get under the bench and bench press 300 pounds today, and I take 3 weeks off and get back under that bench, I guarantee you I can't push up that 300 pounds. Okay, even though I reached that goal. So which tells me either I get stronger or I get weaker, but there is no standing still. So I try to apply everything to life principles, and so that for me, that this life is the same way. I've got to continue to grow. You know, I'm always in a state of becoming. You know, am I secure in some of the things that I become? Yeah, absolutely, but I can get better. You know, because if I get better, I may acquire some skill or some knowledge that somebody needs. And if I didn't reach that level, you know, I can't do that. And I also believe that God allows us to walk through some things for a reason. For us to become what he's designed us to be. Some of them pleasant, some of them not so pleasant. Example, who is the best person on the face of the earth to counsel a woman who's been raped? What do you think? Another woman who's been raped. Because she understands what that person is going through. Now, it's truly unfortunate that she had to experience that. But now that she's experienced that, look how many people she can help. You know, get over that and get through it. So, you know, I look at some of those aces and some of those experiences that I have. I have 2 Purple Hearts, which means I got wounded in action twice. Both of them were pretty traumatic. I still deal with that trauma. You know, some days are a lot easier than others, but I still live with that. So every experience that I've walked through, I've tried to make it another building block into being who I can to help people. Anybody else? How much time we got? We got 6 minutes. Come on. Somebody else has got a question. let me say this,
Yeah.
and she knows this as well. Again, this is an investment in you. It's the reason why I'm here. So the investment can continue. If you need help with projects, whatever, if you think that I can help you with research or whatever, send me an email. I will answer your email. You know, I've helped some of her students in the past. But if you send me an email, and she'll give you my email address. Did she write it up there? Okay, no. If you send me an email, make sure in the subject line, put Dr. Stauffer's class or ODU student, because I get a gazillion emails, and a lot of them I don't read because I see the content. I was like, I ain't got time for that. I got it. So, and I promise I will answer your email and help you out any way I can. Okay? Thanks.